Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so excited today for many reasons. First of all, it's time to reset. Isn't it always time to reset? And that's really what we've shifted into from take back time to reset. Same great people, except for we are going to bring a little bit more of an element of that dynamic reassessment and help you to be more reflective in the way that you do things. So that is what this is all about. And here we go. I'm excited today because we're talking about something really important. It's do what matters most. Like, duh. Of course we all want to do what matters most. So why don't we do it? Well, that's the big question. And our guest today, Rob Shallenberger, he is going to help us to have some strategies so that we can do exactly that. He is CEO of Becoming Your Best Global Leadership, former F-16 pilot, and global leader on time management and productivity. So you couldn't have a better resource than what we have today. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Penny, thank you. It's so nice being with you and excited for all the listeners that are joining around the world. I'm hopeful and very confident that this will be a deeply impactful podcast and discussion. So I'm excited to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. Why don't we do what matters most? I mean, why?
Yeah, that's actually an easy answer. I think most of us, and let me answer that in two ways. So we just released the second edition of our book called Do What Matters Most in January of 2025, this year. And what we found in our research is that 68% of people feel like prioritizing their time is their number one challenge.
Yeah.
Yet 80% of those same people do not have a process outside of sticky notes and to-do lists. So across the board, people are feeling the pressures of time, right? There's all kinds of people vying for your time. They want a piece of you. And yet, how do we juggle it all? And the other part of this is, it's one thing to talk about statistics, but let's talk about what we're really looking for as people. What I've found as I met with people around the world is that most of us are looking for similar things. In other words, we want more peace in our lives.
Definitely.
We want healthy relationships.
I want more peace. Hello.
Yeah. Right? We want healthy relationships. We want to be able to sleep well. We don't want to be dealing with anxiety or depression and all of these things. And so a lot of people as humans around the world are looking for the same things. The question for most people is how to get there. So we're all desiring and wanting the same thing, but like I said, 80% of people don't have a process or a system that they feel like is doing it for them. And
that
that's
they
where
feel like, can I qualify there? That they feel like is doing it for them. Because if you said to-do list, there is a system. If they have a to-do list, it's just not adequate.
It's not working.
It's just not working.
It's not helping them get to where they want to be. And so that's what Do What Matters Most is all about, is we've developed a system and the accompanying tools, and we've developed a training program, a trainer certification for this, and we've been training organizations around the world on Do What Matters Most because it is a product that is a full-blown system that has all the tools. And our guiding principle when doing this was it has to be simple. Nobody wants to add one more complex thing to their life. And so that's what we've done is developed a simple system that people can use, and it impacts every one of those areas of their life, personal, relationships, etc.
That's awesome. Let me start with the first question before we go into the process that you teach as well. How do we know whether a system is working or not working for us, right? Because I think there's also a lot of people out there that have multiple different apps and different things that they do, and they skip from one thing to the next.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care whether it's time management. The same is true in sales. People move from system to system and with the hope that this new system is going to help them, and it doesn't help them. So I'm a big proponent that it's really not about the system. The problem is us, right? It's me. I'm not consistent in the use of any of those, and that's why some of them fail. So how do we know when something's not working and where to put our attention in terms of getting it to work?
Yeah, Penny, great question. So first of all, in chapter 1 of our book, we mentioned that it's a mindset and a skill set. It's a discipline, it is a habit, and it's developing these right habits. It's being consistent. On the other side, it is having a skill set. So it is about having the right tools and processes. And for a lot of people that are, I mean, I'm just having trained tens of thousands of people around the world. I'm just going to share some of the type of things I'm hearing in conversations. Is they say, I've tried, like you said, they said, I've tried this and this and this, and it just hasn't worked. And though it may appear to be an approach or a system, it's really not. It's a technique. It's a tip. It's an approach, kind of like sticky notes or to-do lists, as an example. And so what I invite people to do is to go through Do What Matters Most, read it, apply those habits for 4 weeks. And there's 3 habits in the book. And they work from high to low, developing a written personal vision, roles and goals, and pre-week planning. And it's all about pre-week planning. So I encourage them to apply those habits and do it for 4 weeks and see what impact it has on their lives. And the way to measure that, to answer your question, there's really 2 ways. There's an objective assessment to say, hey, let's measure this objectively. And we have an assessment that we've created. It's under, so the website, BYB Assessment. So B, the letters BYB, assessment.com. You can take a quick snapshot of where things are today. After doing pre-week planning as outlined in Do What Matters Most, I encourage you to retake the assessment. And it will measure each of those key areas of your life. Where are you at peace-wise, emotionally, spiritually, physically, relationships? More importantly than the objective side, though, Penny, is how we feel. What are our thoughts on a daily basis? And I think for most of us, we intuitively just know. Like inside, we either feel better or we don't.
Yeah.
Like we feel like we're on top of it and we're getting things done, or we don't. And so there's a subjective side to it. Now, my promise is, based on the research that we've done, is that a person who does pre-week planning as outlined in Do What Matters Most will accomplish between 800 to 1,000 additional priorities this year than they would have accomplished otherwise without that habit, all with measurably less stress. That's a powerful promise. So that's why we encourage people to test it. And you're exactly right. It is a mindset and a skill set. But we've got to test the skill set and give it a fair chance to see what impact it actually has.
Yep, definitely. I mean, you definitely have to give something enough time that you're putting it into practice consistently, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that people want this quick fix. They want to take a pill and they want it to be fixed for them, right? Oh, I don't want to have to do anything. I just want it to work. So, and I think to your point is, we feel better. We know it, right? And I relate that. And you talked about in pure numbers of, what did you say, 1,000 more priorities a year. When you're getting more of the right things done, we feel better because we know we're getting the right things done, right? So let's talk about, so that you talked about 3 things in your book that you walk people through, and that's visions, you said roles and goals, and the pre-week planning. So is there anything you want to expand on in there so that people can get a piece of it now, so that they can, of course, they can go after this and get the book, but they want something now. So let's give them something now.
Yeah, so let me just give you just a little bit of a background on this, because these are terms everyone's heard of their whole lives. The terms are nothing new. The approach is completely new. And I would say, based on my experience, again, in our research, 98% of people listening to this right now, and just around the world, and for that matter, have not taken this approach to their lives. And so let me back all the way up, because there's a phrase that we use on our book that really, I think, encapsulates this idea. And that is that we will either lead a life by design or we will live a life by default. And this entire process and approach to what matters most is about scheduling our priorities rather than prioritizing our schedule. So it's really flips time management on its head. And so let me just give you a brief overview.
Right. I think Stephen Covey said that, right?
Yeah, amongst others. Yep.
Right. So I just want to point out, like, this is something that is tried and true. It's been talked about for years and years. So I'm really excited to hear your unique twist on it.
Yes, Penny. And you bring up a great point. Talked about, but never presented in this way.
Right. So give it to us.
Concepts, yes. So here's the approach. So first of all, we introduced the Do What Matters Most matrix and what that's all about. There's a circle of peace and balance. It's an assessment you take at the beginning of the book, see where you're at. That goes back to your earlier question of how do we assess before and after. And then we get into 3 habits. And these are the 3 habits that we've heard about, but are rarely done. And the first is to develop a written personal vision. And when we talk about a vision, again, this is a term that I know that people are familiar with. But yet what was interesting is after surveying thousands of people, only 2% of people actually had a written personal vision. So for as much as it's talked about, clearly it's not being done. And what we're doing with the vision is we're creating the mental reality before the physical reality. And the difference in this approach is we invite people to look at the 5 to 7 roles that matter most in their lives. So if you don't mind, Penny, can we do this real time with you?
Sure, let's do it.
You can be the listener's model here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
So some of the roles that I have in my life is father, husband. Personal and self is the most important role. We've got to take care of ourselves. We can't draw water from an empty well.
Okay.
So personal or self is the most important role. For me, husband, father, caretaker, church member, disciple, friend, philanthropist, investor, CEO. Those are a few of my roles, my key roles. What would be some of yours, Penny?
It'd be mother,
Okay,
wife, and partner.
perfect.
A lot of the same ones that you had in terms of, how do I want to put it? Community care. Let's just put it like that,
Perfect.
right?
That's the gist of it right there. And you just articulated very well that some of these roles are going to overlap. They're very common. Spouse, friend, partner, parent, brother, sister, son, or daughter.
Right.
So what we invite people to do is develop a vision for each of those key roles. Who are we becoming in each of those roles? That's the vision. And again, for 98% of people, they've never done that before. They've thought about it. These things are all in our mind, but to physically write them down is powerful. And in chapters 5 and 6 of the book, we walk you through how to do that. So that's habit 1, is to develop a written personal vision for each role. Habit number 2 is to get specific and say, what are the 1 to 4 targets this year, in other words, goals that I want to focus on? And you've probably heard a common adage that many other people have quoted, and that is, where our focus goes, our energy flows. So this is the powerful process of sitting down and saying specific and measurable targets. What matters most this year in each respective role? And we don't need to do this, but it would just be you as Penny,
Sure.
as a mother. What are my
Right.
goals this year as a mother?
Right.
As a
So for
wife?
instance, for me, it's quality time with my kids, right? So, and creating those quality experiences. So yeah, so we want to be very specific. So I could say that I want to do 3 to 4 unique experiences together with them one-on-one.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And without getting too far into this process, writing goals is a skill set. 85% of New Year's resolutions are broken 2 weeks into the year. So typically, our approach to New Year's resolutions hasn't worked. The way we write our goals matters. We don't ever want to use the words more or better. For example, the word average is powerful. Average 3 workouts per week gives a lot of flexibility and grace. That's important. So habit 2 is roles and goals. It's really all about habit number 3, which is pre-week planning. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
developing a vision and goals, habits 1 and 2, is all about identifying what matters most. Pre-week planning is the doing or the execution.
Mhm.
Now, we've developed specific planners that people can use. They can customize their own planner on our website, or we have a digital planner on Google or Outlook where people can put their vision and goals in one place and do pre-week planning. So it becomes a one-stop shop. With pre-week planning, it's the thought process of, number 1, reviewing your vision and goals. Number 2, asking yourself what matters most this week in each respective role. And then taking that action item and scheduling a time for it. And this only takes like 20 or 30 minutes. So, we spend 0.03% of our week, if we take 20 to 30 minutes, to plan the other 99% of our week. So we don't have to be listening to this podcast and being like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm just not a planner. That's okay. It's just sitting down and saying, what are my roles? What matters most in each role? When will we do it? And it's those 3 habits that come together to help us lead a life by design. Because number 1, we have the high level vision for each of our key roles. We have 1 to 4 goals for each of the key roles. And then every week we're sitting down to say, what can I do that matters most in that respective role this week? With that personal role being the most important one. So that's a brief overview of the 3 habits. Do you mind if I just share one example of how impactful pre-week planning can be? Because it's nice to hear all the how-to and all that, but really, what does it mean?
Absolutely. Because I have a couple of questions asked, because I like to wear the listener's skeptical hat of, hey, how's this going to work for me because of this? So,
Yeah,
maybe we stay in the roles for a second. Let's say I have 10 roles, like you said, mother, daughter, partner, and, right? So let's say there's like 10 different roles and different hats that I wear in my life. I've got my work, and then I've got the community, and then I've got religious activities and, right? So it feels to me when you say that, and I've got to look at 10 roles every week to see how I'm going to achieve those goals, I'm starting to feel a little bit anxious.
overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yes.
That's why, first of all, I said 5 to 7 roles.
Okay.
that
So what do I
exact
do with the
reason.
rest?
Find a way to consolidate them. I'm talking about your 5 to 7 most important roles. So let me back up and
Okay.
just use, without overthinking this too much, let me back up a little bit. A couple things that are important to note about this. Our target productivity quotient is 70 to 80%. In other words, we're allowing flexibility and grace and allowing for life to happen so that 20 to 30% of what we plan each week won't happen. It'll get pushed forward. It may get shifted to another week, or it just may not happen. And that's okay. That's part of it. That's the expectation. So there's no expectation that we need to overplan or be perfect. is all we're doing is scheduling our priorities. So let me give you an example. Executive team for Pepsi. One of our certified trainers was doing the training for the executive team of Pepsi. And these are seasoned individuals, right? I mean, it's not like these people don't already have plans,
Sure.
goals, and all kinds of stuff. This particular individual in his low 60s was doing pre-week planning for his first time ever, because we can't delegate this to an executive assistant, a secretary, or anyone else. We own pre-week
Right.
planning to include AI. So he wrote father as one of his roles. Under the role of father, he wrote call my son. And the trainer asked him and said, okay, well, that's cool. Why call your son if you don't mind me asking? Seems pretty simple. And, he's in his young 60s.
Right.
And his response was, because 7 years ago, my son and I got into an argument and we haven't talked since. So all of a sudden, call my son is a big deal, right? So the trainer asks him, well, when are you going to do it? That's step 4 of pre-week planning. So he puts it in his planner for Thursday at 7 o'clock. Great. 6 months later, this trainer has a follow-up with the same team, and he sees this executive, and there's just a palpable difference in his energy. I mean, he can just sense the difference. And so he asks him, he's like, so how did it go? Did you have a chance to call your son? And the response was, you know what? I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. I was scared to death to make that call, because you could imagine after 7 years, what's that going to be like?
Absolutely.
But there it was in my planner, and I had procrastinated that call for years, and I knew that this was the time I was going to make the call, because there it was. And so he did. He picked up the phone. And what was interesting is he went on to share with that trainer. He said, as soon as we started talking, first of all, we couldn't even remember what we'd argued about 7 years prior. Second, we've gone on to become best friends, and we now talk every week. And then finally, he said, what was amazing is I discovered on that first call that I had 2 grandchildren who I didn't even know existed.
Wow.
So the question is, how many times have we been like that particular individual where there's something important in our lives, but I'll just do it next week. I'll do it the week after. And it tends to get kicked down the road until 7 years have passed. Now, that's just one example of something as simple as calling his son. We ask ourselves, how could that have slipped down the road 7 years? And it's not until he sat back and said, my role as father, what can I do this week? Call my son. And we can do that with each of our key roles. So in your case, Penny, and my role, husband or wife, let's not overcomplicate this. It's, as a husband, what can I do this week? Write a note to Tanya. Date night. What can I do for my daughter, Lana? How about in that personal role to take care of myself? If I'm going to exercise, when am I going to do that? How about that important blood draw that I've been meaning to get? Well, how about professionally? What can I do to keep us ahead of the curve? And what matters most? So it's not really rocket science as we sit back and think about it. It's saying, what are my roles? What matters most? And as long as we're accomplishing 70, 80%, we're right in the window. If we're like
getting us to think about, so we can go back and forth a little bit for people. So it's getting people to really connect with what matters to them, right? As soon as he connects with that role of father, then he's thinking about, well, geez, I'm feeling a gap in my life, right? And I think that's the key thing of what I'm hearing you say is just by holding yourself accountable to thinking about those roles on a weekly basis helps you to get connected into your heart about what really matters most in doing that. And then the priorities become much clearer. And then when you schedule them, you're being held accountable for it. And of course, if you have a coach, that's even better to hold you accountable because someone's going to say, did you make the call? So yes, I just want to make sure that everybody's listening. When I say that, that's what people were feeling. And so now we're getting really the essence of it's just about really reconnecting with what you really want in your life for those roles. And I would even say 3 to 5 a week. You can swap them around, right? If you put too much on your plate or too much to think about, then sometimes that can make people feel overwhelmed. But I like that idea that you're thinking on a regular basis about all those roles in your life that you can easily just get stuck thinking about one, which is work, 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 right? Or one thing.
And here's why, Penny, it shouldn't feel overwhelming to people. And it won't after doing it for 4 weeks. And that's why I said at the beginning, 4 weeks. Test it for 4 weeks. Because if a person does this for 4 weeks, they're going to find the right balance. In other words, we say this target productivity quotient, and I'm not all about numbers. I think numbers have a place and they're really valuable to tell a story. But we mentioned the target productivity quotient of 70 to 80%, the PQ. If we're only accomplishing 40% of what we pre-planned, it tells a story. We're either over planning, we're getting bombarded by other things or other people, but something is going on that's telling a story. If we're easily accomplishing 100%, we're not stretching. There's more that we could give to ourselves and others. So that's why that's kind of like the heart of the envelope. And it's important to allow ourselves a little bit of grace and to figure out what works for us. So for me, my roles don't change. They're the same each week. And it literally takes me 20 minutes We're not going to do it here because I know a lot of people are listening rather than watching, but I could pull up my Google Calendar and show you the tool.
Yeah.
There's the roles right across the top. And I just look at each role and I type in a handful of action items that I can focus on this week and accomplish. And then I click and assign a time for each one of my Google Calendar. It's as simple as a note to a daughter or a son.
Right.
It's calling a friend that we haven't talked with for a couple of years. It's sending a text to so-and-so. It's submitting the tax report ahead of schedule and on time. It's these little things that cumulatively add up. And the last comment I'll make on this, Penny, is the major difference is what most of us are used to doing is we go into our week and we schedule our meetings and things we have to do, right? Here's what I need to do.
The urgencies is what you're saying. Like the things, yeah.
And here's our top 3 priorities. Here's the focus 3 for today. Here's priority ABC, and all of that's fine. But none of those things are allowing us to have that holistic, balanced look at our life. And that's why pre-week planning is so life-changing, is because it helps us to look at the respective roles. That executive at Pepsi, in his 40 years at Pepsi, had never thought about that role as father. And so that's the holistic approach to it.
I love it. Great. So we're coming to the end of our time. So what didn't I ask you that you think is important that people have, that if they haven't already decided that they want to go get the book and learn more, what else do they need to know?
Can I just share 2 stories maybe? This is off the top of my head. I mean, we're just having a quick conversation. One of my favorite things that I love to do, and this is just a little bit philosophical, it's kind of the why behind it, is I love to drive through cemeteries. And that might sound a little weird.
It does, yes.
It does. And the reason why is because it's introspective for me. And it reminds me to think about, am I doing what matters most? Because if you look at a headstone, and there's a little book written called The Dash about this. If you look at these headstones, there's a birth date, a death date, and in between is a dash. I ask myself, every time I look at a headstone, I don't know that individual. And I ask myself, what were the stories in their dash? What were the relationships in their life in that particular dash? What did they do with their time in their dash? Because there's a death date on there. Their dash is done being written. And then I ask myself, and everybody listening to this right now, every one of us still has an open-ended dash on the right-hand side. And so what are we doing with our dash? Are we being intentional about what matters most? And that's a pretty reflective question. And maybe just one more story. This is actually at the end of our book. What really does this is my mom passed away 4 years ago from early onset Alzheimer's. She was diagnosed at age 55 and died at age 65. And when you watch that happen, it really is a perspective changer, because a lot of the things that we might have thought were important suddenly are not important. Mm-hmm. And I'll just finish with this, and then I'll wrap up my side of it, Penny. There's a story in our book, and this is a widely shared story. There's different versions of it, but I think the essence of it is what's important. And that is this father who's sitting at his table. He's been working on a project all day long on his laptop. And his young son comes up to him late in the evening and says, "Dad, can I borrow $20?" And a little perturbed, he responds, "No, I'm in the middle of this project." And you see his son's face kind of drop and the countenance drop, and he hunches his shoulders and walks away. Well, after about 10 to 15 minutes, the dad had become a little upset, was a little flustered because he's in the middle of this important deadline and project that he's working on. But then he thinks about it and he's like, that probably wasn't the right approach. And so being late in the evening, he walks to his son's room and he can hear his son whimpering and crying. And he goes into his son's room and he says, "I apologize. I was probably a little hard on you there. I snapped, and I apologize." And he said, "Do you mind if I asked you why you wanted the $20? And the son asked, "Well, Dad, how much is an hour of your time? How much do you make in an hour?" And he said, "About $50. And the son responded, "Well, I've saved up like $20 or $30, and I just need another $20 so that I can buy an hour of your time."
Ouch.
And so, there's different versions of that story. But if that was real, and that story actually happened, could you imagine the things that would be going through that father's mind at that point? What sitting right in front of him is what mattered most in that time and in that moment. And so do what matters most is way more than statistics. It's way more than just numbers. It's really about stepping back and asking ourselves, are we leading a life by design or living a life by default? Are we being intentional about our dash? And as all we've done is developed a system that people can use along with the accompanying planner that they can get at dowhatmattersmostplanner.com and do exactly the things that we've been talking about. And that's why I invite people to do it for 4 weeks, is figure out your cadence and your rhythm, what works for you. And after doing it for 4 weeks, a person will dial it in and it'll be life-changing for them.
I can see that for sure. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. A couple quick, we're at the top of the hour, but I just want to ask you a couple quick things. This show has been relabeled to time to reset, right? People to reset the way that they look at the way they do things. So this is a perfect step back, right? To look at those roles and to plan your priorities based on each of those roles. For you personally, what are some resets that you use? And this is kind of lightning round, so make them really quick. What's one thing that you do to turn around your mood if you're offset?
Yeah, prayer meditation.
Okay, great. And do you have like a quote or something that you say to yourself or something that you reflect on that helps you get perspective when you need it? A mantra,
A
something of
mantra
that
maybe
sort.
is a
Yeah.
different way of saying that. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better because of a loving God and Jesus Christ.
Okay, awesome. And how about a song? A song that you turn to that can also create uplifting.
I laugh at this because most people are going to laugh at it. Boot, Scoot, and Boogie. Brooks and Dunn.
Awesome. Okay, great. So I just wanted to ask a couple of those things, right? Because those are some quick ways that when we're off track that we can just take 60 seconds or as long as a song, maybe it's 2 minutes in some cases, but that we can turn our mood around, we can shift our perspective and we can get back on track very quickly if we allow ourselves that grace and space to do it. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people just give us the URL again of where people, and it'll all be in the show notes, but where can people find more information about you and the book?
Yeah, becomingyourbest.com. Becomingyourbest.com is our site that has all of our different trainings and books. Probably the easiest is just go to Amazon and get the book, Do What Matters Most. Or if you want to get a planner or customize a planner for you or download that digital planner that we referenced, you can go to dowhatmattersmostplanner.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Penny.
And thank you all for being here. Remember, it's time to reset. When is it time to reset? Every time you're feeling tired, hungry, frustrated, you need some creativity. Give yourself the grace and space to reset. And today's episode was a perfect way to reset every week with looking at the roles and what's important to you in each role. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.